Welcome to a Brief History Conspiracy Additional. So in this additional episode, in this short series of episodes, I'm going to be talking about where I think mankind will be by the end of the next century. Obviously, if I'm talking about the next 80 years, I got to start with climate change, ain't I? Please subscribe and like this video. It really does help us. If nothing else, it keeps my morale up. So, the President of the United States, Mr. Donald Trump, doesn't actually believe climate change is man-made. He believes it's a natural phenomenon and not something we should worry about too much because actually, if it's a bit warmer, it'll be very nice for the economy. This is a man that also believes, though, that wind turbines give you cancer, so I apologise if I don't take his word as gospel just yet. But he's not the only one actually saying this. Randall Carlson, big bearded fella, appears on Joe Rogan quite a lot. He talks about this same thing. But he makes the point that actually the climate always changes on Earth. We go through constant cold and warm phases. They normally last thousands of years, but they can be very sudden as well. And we know this. We know that our climate changes constantly. We don't always necessarily understand why though, but we know it's not man-made because we weren't about to do it. So, he talks about the sun influence on the Earth, CO2 from natural release on the Earth, and just a natural system that we don't fully understand. Some people have called him a climate change denier for this and actually attacked him. And he says, I'm not a climate change denier. I know it happens. I'm just wondering how much of it is man-made or man-made influence. He makes the big point that the Earth was actually beginning to warm before the Industrial Revolution. 200 years ago, the Earth was becoming out of a little mini ice age, a period where the Thames used to freeze regularly, something that never happens today. We were warming before that period, before the Industrial Revolution began, before we began dumping CO2 into the atmosphere. So how can it be completely man-made? I agree with his argument to a point, but I have to ask the question, does it really matter if climate change is man-made or not? Climate change is happening. There's no argument against that, it's happening. The average global temperatures are increasing. We're seeing an increase in tropical storms. We're seeing an acidification of the oceans, which is destroying coral and harming wildlife. We are seeing this happen. What we need to do now is figure out what we're going to do about it. Randall Carlson, however, also talks about being an environmentalist. He talks about the fact that he's making this argument doesn't change the fact that we're destroying the Earth anyway. We pollute on massive scales. We poison the oceans. We dump nitrates in huge quantities on our farmland. It then rains. Those nitrates get washed into the ocean. Nitrates and everything else that we dump on our food, pesticides, etc. They get washed into the oceans and cause dead zones. Vast areas of the ocean where nothing can live. This should terrify us because if the oceans die, we die. The planet dies. But we're still doing it. We should be terrified about how much deforestation has happened in the last 100 years. The trees of this planet are literally the lungs of the planet. And we're cutting them down in vast numbers. A lot of the time, we're not even cutting them down for the wood. We actually use quite a lot of sustainable wood nowadays, where we grow specific trees and plants and we use sustainable wood. A lot of the time we're cutting down, particularly in the rainforests in Brazil, vast areas we cut down for cattle, for grassland, because we love hamburgers. Now, I love a steak and a beer as much as anyone, but I don't actually want to kill the planet over it. We need to stop deforestation. And that doesn't matter whether climate change is man-made or not. We need to stop. Oil is running out. When Saudi Arabia and OPEC start being honest about how much oil there's actually left in the ground, oil prices are going to go up massively, and we're going to end up in a Mad Max style end of the world. We're going to end up having wars over oil if things don't change and our dependency on oil doesn't change dramatically. And nobody can sit here and say that there won't be, because in the last 20 years we've already had one. Two, really. We invaded Iraq twice, and really both it was over oil. Large sections of our industry are based on petroleum. Our plastics that we use for lots of things, even though I know we're trying to cut down on our plastics, we still need them for lots of things. But the oil's running out. Whether climate change is man-made or not doesn't change the fact that we need to switch to electric cars. We need to switch to plant-based plastics. Environmentally, we need to stop dumping our plastic in the oceans, and we need to clean up the plastic that we've already dumped in the oceans. For lots of reasons. It's choking our oceans, it's killing the fish, but also fish eat those plastics. We then eat the fish, and there's been strong links to carcinogens, basically giving us cancer. We need to, for our own good, we need to stop doing this stuff. Nothing to do with man-made climate change. Another massive problem is overpopulation. I remember there being 5 billion people on this planet. I'm only 40, but I remember when there were 5 billion people on the planet. There's now nearly 8. Within my lifetime, the population of the planet has actually doubled. By the end of the century, we're looking at having 15 billion people living on the Earth. We can't cope with 7.5. I do actually have a plan or an idea how we can deal with some of this overpopulation, but I'm going to talk about it in coming episodes. But for this episode, I just want to say that overpopulation is only going to magnify and increase the problems that we have. It is only going to put more pressure on our demand for food, more pressure on our demand for fuel. As our population nearly doubles in the next 100 years, we need to figure out how to double our resources. And currently, that can't happen. That won't happen. It's impossible. We're going to have far more problems with fresh water, power, and food, as well as the fact that we all then need to live somewhere. All of this is just going to magnify the problems I've been talking about in this video, but also magnify the pressure on nature. We already are pushing nature to the brink of extinction. A recent study said that 750 plant species have become extinct in the last 250 years through human activity. We can't lose that many plants again. We can't. How many animals have gone extinct or are about to go extinct? You don't have to be a massive environmentalist to still care about life and the fact that we're destroying it. And with the more of us, the more cities that we build, the more homes that we build, we're just going to keep pushing nature back. And at some point, we're going to get to a stage where there isn't any left. Nature will collapse. Now, I don't know whether we can survive that, whether our species will carry on, or whether there'll be effects that we don't foresee, but I think about the bee population and how there's so much worry about it decreasing. Many reasons for it, a disease, blight. I actually think mobile phones and the radiation we put into the atmosphere isn't probably good for lots of insects. It affects the way they communicate and things like this, but just pollution. But whatever the reason, the bee population is collapsing. We need them. We can't live without them. I have to wonder, what effects to our behaviour haven't we even seen yet? But I do have some solutions in this video. I'm not just going to be moaning. And I do have a plan on how we can change things in the next 100 years. And how I think we will change things in the next 100 years. But there are some things we could do immediately. Our government could do today. I would say it should be law tomorrow that if a construction company wants to cut a tree down, they have to plant 100. If you go up to Scotland, it's vast emptiness for hundreds of miles. Heather and things like this grow. It used to be forest. We cut it all down to build warships and houses in the Victorian age and the Edwardian age. We should be reforesting these areas. We don't farm it. We don't really use it for anything else. Let's reforest it. And it wouldn't cost the taxpayer anything. It would take a little nibble out of the construction company's profits. Something else that we could do, though, as well, is that if you want to build a house that costs £150,000 or more, you have to have solar panels on the roof. Again, it wouldn't cost anything. And then the next thing will be subsidising battery packs for our houses so that we can generate electricity during the day and store it for the night. This would actually have a massive impact as well. Imagine actually having an electric car. You're out during the day at work, your solar panels kicking along at night, charging your battery pack, you drove home, you plug your car in, you charge your car up, and you go the next day. Your electric costs would be zero. These changes could be immediate and they are coming. Tesla is working very hard on these projects and Elon Musk is very confident that this is going to be the future. He already says solar panels, existing technology, is good enough to run your home on. So these are the things we could do right now. And it would be so easy. So to answer the big question, does it matter whether climate change is man-made or not? I'm going to disagree with Randall Carlson on this one because I think it does. And I'm afraid the evidence says that even though there are natural reasons why the Earth is warming at the moment, and there have been periods where the Earth has been much warmer than it is now, there is also evidence to say that the Earth is warming because of man-made interference as well. And the problem is, the Earth has never had to deal with this before. The problem is that with deforestation, pollution, and everything else that we're doing, the amount of CO2 we're unnaturally dumping into the atmosphere and the oceans, we might just be taking the legs out from under the Earth. We might just be pushing the Earth to its limits. And whereas through natural warming and cooling, the Earth was always able to move forwards, always able to cope, and always able to adapt, we might just be removing the ability for the Earth to do that. My fear is that the current climate change could become a runaway climate change. And we may just be doing damage to this Earth that could take thousands of years to repair. But it's not all doom and gloom. And there are a lot of very clever people out there that are looking at ways that we could maybe even reverse this. And that's what we're going to be discussing in the next video. So, thank you so much for watching. And don't have nightmares.